Time now for the press review with Deeptika Laurent. Deepti, good to see you.
Hi, Delano.
You're starting out in Mexico, where protests have raged in the country after the murder of the third journalist this year.
Just this year, that's right. Her name was Lourdes Maldonado Lopez, and the politics and crime reporter was shot dead reportedly in her car outside her home in Tijuana on Sunday evening. Her death has triggered nationwide protests because she was the third journalist killed in just this year following the murders of photojournalists Margarito Martinez and Luis Gamboa. Their attackers and the motives for their deaths are not yet known.
But some papers are talking about a workplace dispute she was having.
That's right. In the case of Maldonado's death, her death is still being investigated, but some are alluding to this workplace dispute because she had been pretty vocal about an unfair dismissal involving her former employer, a television network owned by Jaime Bonilla, a powerful regional politician and media boss. She had even asked for help during a press conference with the Mexican president, and he had asked one of his staffers to look into the dispute. This paper, Mexican paper here, Crónica, noting that the labor dispute was resolved eventually, but the journalist lived just a few hours after that triumph in court. For protesting journalists, her death was really the last straw, particularly because she had been so high profile, because she had sought the attention of the president for help and had also said that she feared for her life.
Moving on now, Deepti, to an article in the Times of London, which looks at the Belgian city of Antwerp and its losing battle against billionaire drug dealers.
Yeah, customs officials in the Belgian city, which is described as being on the front line of Europe's fight against drug trafficking, are increasingly threatened, blackmailed, and bribed by gangs bringing in tons and tons of cocaine through the port of Antwerp. It is the most significant gateway for drugs coming in from South America into Europe. And while officers are seizing record amounts of drugs, it's a drop in the ocean compared to how much is actually entering the continent. It's even reached the mayor of Antwerp, Bart de Wever, who was placed under a 24/7 police protective watch over a possible gang attack recently. He has even warned of a new class of drug money-funded entrepreneurs who are infiltrating local politics in Antwerp. He's described this threat, drugs, as being the bigger threat to security, even bigger than terrorism.
Wow, that's crazy. Moving on now to reactions from the West to Russian troop drills near Ukraine.
The standoff continues there, of course, Delano, with Russia launching these new exercises around Ukraine a day after thousands of U.S. troops were put on standby, really intensifying a crisis that not just threatens Europe's stability, but also the image of U.S. leadership. At least that's what the Swiss paper Le Temps says on its front page. The paper calling the current situation in Ukraine a psychological war, one in which Vladimir Putin is confronting a weakened Joe Biden. That sentiment also echoed in the French paper Le Figaro today, which really laments the fact that U.S. diplomatic efforts have had no effect in de-escalating Ukraine tensions. And they, in this article, point to Joe Biden's, quote, hesitations, which they say have weakened the West's powers of dissuasion.
Well, we'll see how that story shapes out in the days and weeks to come. A bit of sports news from you now. French rugby man Antoine Dupont is gracing the cover of GQ France this month.
That's right. The 25-year-old has had a stellar year, Delano. He was named World Player of the Year, European Player of the Year. He captained France in a series of successful matches last year. He's now on the cover of GQ this month in that what looks like a yellow bathrobe, but I'm not sure. They call him the, quote, new superhero.
Is he wearing that on the cover?
I'm not sure if that's on the cover, but that was at least in the article. They're calling him the new superhero of French sports, describing him as an exceptional sportsman and off the field, humble and reserved, a very adoring profile out in next month's GQ.
And finally, from you, Taylor Swift is at it again. There's beef between her and Damon Albarn, a former frontman for Blur.
That's right. Well, to be fair, she didn't instigate this one. Damon Albarn sparked the feud, this feud, with comments that singer-songwriter Taylor Swift doesn't really write her own songs. That was in an interview. Swift, never one to back down, then called out Albarn for his, quote, damaging and false claims. All the Swiftie fans rallied behind their favorite singer and were quick to defend her and denounce Albarn. Among those fans was the president-elect of Chile, He took to Twitter telling Swift not to take these men who need to lie or insult to get attention too seriously, and sent, quote, hugs from the South.
Fantastic. She is quite a hard worker, one of the hardest working women in the music industry. Thank you very much for that, Deeptika Laurent there. And you can track other issues of the press review on our website. The address is france24.com.